Peter, I got to transition over to Stephen
Of
Bird,
course.
but whom we met in the Hamptons, but welcome and look forward to
Of
having
course.
with us. What I would also say was a in a new world unfolding order yesterday in the White House was not exactly an everyday occurrence. And I assume, Stephen, you're going to talk about that in some shape or form. And I should turn it over to you to Rich's point.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's been an unusual several months, but yesterday was certainly an unusual showing.
Sorry, you may want to, Stephen, go off video. It's okay.
Okay.
We know who you are, most of us. Or no, you not audio, video.
I'm new at this.
You are not new at this.
Give me one sec.
Let's stay on video until we can't hear you.
One sec. Video.
Duncan, you're good. Hi, Duncan Briefler. It's good to see you. Now he's actually. Oh, here he is. Okay.
All right, give me one sec, Mark.
All good.
There we go.
Or among family.
All righty. So, yes, the love him or don't. President Trump he's gotten a lot of stuff done, and he's done a lot of stuff in the 6 months he's been in office. And I think the Alaskan summit was highly unusual. The meeting in Washington, D.C. yesterday was also highly unusual. And it is going to weigh a lot on what happens over the next 6 months and well beyond with the war in Ukraine potentially getting resolved in some form. I think this week we have the Jackson Hole meeting, and we'll talk about that. I want to talk about some of the challenges out of China continuing in the property market and what that might mean. Touch on the Russian economy and why I think that's part of what's pushing the negotiations forward, and then what does this all mean for the markets? So we've had a really unusual period, and Jackson Hole kicks off this week, and Chair Powell is speaking on Friday. The title for the Jackson Hole Symposium is Labor Markets in Transition, and they're talking about topics we've talked about for most of this year, the demographics, productivity, and immigration issues, and what that's doing to the labor markets. And I think this is really the big issue that is weighing on the Fed and how they think about moving and where they are going to go with rate cuts. Now, we know where the administration's position is on rate cuts. Scott Bessent thinks rates should be 150 to 175 basis points lower on from Fed funds. He also thinks that the Fed should consider 50 basis point cuts at this September meeting. I don't think that either one of those is likely to happen anytime soon. I think the Fed has a view that they don't have clarity on the unemployment market. They don't have clarity on the impact of tariffs. And while the CPI numbers have come in, giving the indication that we should have multiple rate cuts, right now, actually, the betting markets are calling for an 84% cut in September and 53 basis points by the end of the year. I would suggest that if the market gets anything close to what the administration would like, the bond vigilantes will come out and have a different perspective. And I think the reason for that and the reason for the Fed's hesitancy to cut rates is what we saw with the PPI number. You saw it pop to a 0.9% month over month change and an over 3% move. 1 year out, inflation expectations from a number of sources, including the New York Fed, are looking at 3+% inflation a year out. So the idea that don't have inflation and that tariffs aren't going to create a problem, I think the answer on tariffs is we don't know. We haven't seen the flow through of tariffs yet. You had supply and demand imbalances being brought back by uh, businesses pulling forward demand, trying to get ahead of the tariffs. Then you had windows open up like you saw for rare earths in July, where there was a massive purchase of rare earths because the window opened up again. I think you're going to see those types of shifts. I believe over the next 2 quarters, we're going to get to the real impact of tariffs because companies that have been holding, waiting to see what the outcome of trade negotiations are going to be. I think we're closer to the end of that. I also think that companies are no longer able to just absorb the tariffs internally and will start passing on whatever level they're going to pass on to the consumer. I think the administration is not in favor of having that kind of view that there might be more inflation coming. The president had suggested that Goldman fire Jan Hatzius, who may be one of the finest economists in the world. He is certainly not of the administration's political leanings, but has been a fine economist. And I think that the sense of where we're going here on rates and inflation, I think the administration's hope is that we're not going to see it. I don't think it's going to be as high as the market fears are, but I think the cost of living will be higher. And I think we'll have a much better sense in the coming quarters. Switching gears to China, you saw the Evergrande delisting, which suggests that the property issues persist, but may be getting closer to a resolution. The government is taking further steps to try and address the property issues, but property problems persist. As you can see, this is year-over-year sales by the top developers, and without stimulus, it's been negative since the beginning of last year. So that suggests that more stimulus will likely be required. I don't know that stimulus solves this problem because I think when you have problems that are longer than a normal cycle, I don't think you can just stimulate your way out of it. I just think it offsets some of the short-term pain. And I think at some point you got to get to the full pain in the system. I think China is taking steps to try and stimulate in ways that will help in other areas. They're looking for local governments to start buying some of these properties from the developers to try and get things moving again. I don't know that that's going to help, but they are doing things, working with small businesses to try and rationalize pricing around the system, and they are working on social safety net issues. But consumer confidence remains low. It's been low since the pandemic lockdowns. The real estate problems continue to weigh on the system, and it's hard for people to get the confidence right now to become bigger spenders, and that leads to a problem rebalancing the economy. I think China's going to take steps to fix things, but I think they will work through it. I think it'll take some time. I think they'll get through these issues and be okay, but I think it's going to be tough for the population as they get there. Switching gears to Russia, I think they are running on fumes right now. It's been a war-driven economy. You can see they've avoided a recession. I think their finance minister has done a phenomenal job to get them to this point. But you can't run in a war economy this long and create the distortions that it's been created. And Adam may know better, but I was reading an article the other day that when the war first broke out, the government mandated that the banks shift their lending policies, which had them making loans to the defense industry that may not come back as paid off loans in the future, which could be creating a embedded problem in the system that will persist well after the war. And it also has diverted funds away from other industries, which will make them very, very difficult to wean off a war-driven economy at the end. I'm not sure that I thought the meeting, Mark, was exceptional, what we saw with the European leaders coming to DC and talking about security pledges for Ukraine, but I'm not sure that the red lines that are being set up by Putin would be acceptable to Europe or to Ukraine. So I don't know how this ends, and I think it'll be interesting to hear from Hamlet and others, Adam, who are more expert on Russia and military, where this goes. But it feels like to me that it'll take a while to get this thing resolved, and that in between getting a resolution, we're going to have a lot more loss of life, unfortunately, for the Ukrainian people. So I think this is going to drag on. It is interesting, though, that the president has been very aggressive on pushing for peace around the world. And I saw that Hamas is close to accepting an agreement in the Middle East. So maybe we'll get past this. And if we can get through to a positive outcome for Russia and Ukraine, I think the rebuild for Europe and the spend for Europe could be a big driver in turning around the fortunes of Europe overall. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens the next couple of weeks. But I'm just skeptical that we can get through an agreement given the position that Putin's taken. Switching gears to the markets, I think the big issue here is the big tech spend versus the valuations and their growth rates and what it means for the rest of the markets. I saw today that the top 10 companies in the S&P now account for 40% of the weight of the S&P. I think in 2000 it was around 27%, 29%. It is very different, though. These companies are producing massive cash flows to be able to fund the CapEx, but they are. It will be a question of can they maintain the valuations? Can the valuations be justified by the growth rates? I think we are seeing a broadening out. At ARS, we've actually have been underweight the Magnificent Seven and haven't owned, unfortunately, Meta or Tesla in their big runs. But we have found that we're getting more cautious in this area and have been taking advantage of the market moves to trim down positions as we've had the big gains that have come. I think there will be a shift away from these guys over time, but it'll take a lot longer than I think most people will expect, that their valuations will continue to be stronger than people will be expecting. So just in closing, Mark, I think we've had such an unusual period of reglobalization or deglobalization or shifting of globalization to the new world order. And trade has been so distorted from the pandemic to the wars to now the tariffs that it's very hard for people to have confidence in the numbers that they're seeing or to make good decisions around it, both policymakers, business leaders, and investors. And I think when you step back through it, I think global trade is going to continue to grow. I think you will see shifts like we've seen around a more bifurcated economy, like we've talked about a US-centric or a Western-centric and a China-centric orientation. I think we are seeing trade distortions continuing around the tariffs, and I think over the next quarter we'll get better clarity on where the tariff impact actually is being borne, how much the exporters are taking on, how much the businesses take on, and how much the consumer is going to eat. I do think the adjustment will be managed. I think it'll be a challenge for the low-end consumer, and the middle class is still going to struggle. I don't think rate cuts are going to solve the problem that we have. I think in the US, you have a housing problem that'll become, I think, the flashpoint for the midterms is the key debate of how that'll play out. But I think you're about to see the unleashing of one of the most massive investment spends in history. We have investors sitting on 7 trillion of money markets. You have massive cash in the private markets. You have big spend available for public companies, and you have a very supportive administration for building immediately with the expenses of depreciation on new builds. So I think there's a whole series of things that will be favorable for the markets, and I think that's the reason why we've risen through in the face of uncertainty and been so resilient. I will just close, Mark, with the idea that the stock and the bond markets are sending very different messages. And we have to heed the bond market's message of if you're too aggressive, they will step in and send a message that rates will move up. We saw that last year in September when we cut 50 basis points and rates moved up. I think you have to be very careful of getting too aggressive on rate cuts in such a strong economy. I also think you just want to focus on the areas of required spending to have the greatest certainty because things are moving too fast. So I'll stop there, Mark, and open it up for discussion.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. 1,000 times. Next point. So what I like about Stephen Burke is if you don't know him, you're getting to know him. Um, the world needs well, usually you do this a little bit better, Stephen, on the whole pros and cons, but I like, the bulls and bears. Uh,
Yep.
but you don't have to agree with Stephen. Let's just have a discussion. Questions.
Hey, Stephen, on Russia, it's Pete Thurlow. There's a lot of
Yep.
discussion on the next step of sanctions if they don't agree on a deal, the $300 billion in sanctions, and separately secondary tariffs that they may put in place against India and so on. Just any thoughts on that saber rattling and to incentivize Russia to enter into a deal? Because I've heard a lot about the Russian economy this week as well.
Yeah, I would actually suggest that the only way you're really going to get Russia to focus isn't the sanctions anymore. It's not the going after India and China. I think it's telling Ukraine you're going to give them everything they need from a military perspective to defend themselves. But that's my take. I'll leave it to there's a lot of more Russian experts on the call.
Yeah, let's let others hit on that. And Walter, just pause for a second. I definitely want to acknowledge the Seattle room.
Is Adam might have a better sense.
Adam is on. Adam, do you want to speak to that at all? There he is.
Good morning, everyone. So let's regarding Russia and the negotiations, sanctions are not going to move Putin. He feels that he's winning the war, and he feels that he's in a strong position. The Alaska event was a big win for Putin in that he has demonstrated to the global South that he is equivalent to a US president. That is something that the Soviets and the Russians have always salivated over. Will there be a bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin? That's a big question. Keep in mind that when Alexei Navalny was alive, the opposition leader, Putin would never acknowledge Navalny, nor speak his name. And that goes to the heart of the war, his war on Ukraine. Putin has never accepted Ukrainian sovereignty. Neither does he accept the sovereignty of the South Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and what have you. But Ukraine is particularly gnawing at him. Neither does he accept Zelensky's position as head of state. So if a meeting does take place between the two of them, just the two of them, that will be a huge breakthrough. It is equivalent to the meeting in Alaska between him.
But Adam, to make that happen, is the presumably commitment of the U.S. to be part of a security guarantee? What? And okay, there's sanctions, but what's bringing Putin to the table? Because he's making progress. He's throwing, whatever at the slaughter to do it. Because as everyone knows, Adam and I lived in Russia for a long time. 8 years for me. I don't know how many for you, Adam.
18.
And actually, when I turn the camera, Rich, I call Rich Sobel good or for bad. You're really a father or godfather of private equity in Russia. Creating, Bering Vostok and all the things that we did. Price Waterhouse, Ernst and Young, Arthur Andersen, everything I did. We helped build Russia. And here we are. So what brings Putin to the table today?
It's a good question, Mark. I think it's a combination of the economy, while the economy is on fumes, it is suffering. Russia is not the Soviet Union. The Russian economy,
Yeah, but Russia can handle suffering, right?
and it can handle
And,
suffering,
and it just has. It just
and it has.
America would fold under this kind of thing.
Absolutely. And the
So
Europeans would
what
fold.
really brings Russia to what brings them to the table today? You don't know, or is
I
this
don't know.
just a ruse?
It's not Russia, it's Putin. What is bringing Putin to the table? I
Well, what's
I
different
have to
in the
say, I
last
don't
24 hours is, what do you think of what Europe just did in the White House?
I think it was very, very good. They needed to be there. And it does send a message of unity to Putin.
So
Look,
is a trade-off? I keep some land, I keep a buffer zone. You guys can have some troops, but if you're gonna have a security guarantee, that might feel like NATO.
well, Mark, you are a lawyer. There are many lawyers on this call. The devil is in the details.
Yeah.
You could talk about
Andy
security
Fish, why are you shaking
guarantees.
your head? You have a different opinion?
I think the number of lawyers is overstated, but I do have an opinion. Is Adam, actually more of a question for Adam. It Putin, for two questions. One's very straightforward. Would Putin survive some sort of peace agreement regardless of the terms? Assuming the terms had security guarantees like, I don't know, American troops in Ukraine, something like that. So just keep it at that.
Yes, he will survive because he controls the narrative in Russia. He controls the media. Um, any peace agreement will be spun as a win. Okay. And keep in mind the conflict, the war is not about land. Russia has plenty of land. It's all about control over Ukraine. It's about Ukrainian sovereignty and sphere of influence.
All
I
right.
wrote about this past weekend. Something to look at also is the Azerbaijan-Armenian peace declaration in the White House.
Yeah.
Okay. The Z bloggers, the turbo patriots are livid about that. Alexander Dugin, who I follow.
Adam, can I interrupt you for half a second? I don't know if everybody on the call knows. There's been a conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Russia was the buffer. Russia was the peacemaker. They got into a fight. Russia was nowhere to be found. The Americans have now stepped in as the controller of the corridor between the countries going out.
Thank you, Andrew.
I want
tend to get too far into the details, but
I want to acknowledge the Seattle group. Can you just give a wrap up thought, Adam?
I'm glad that we have dialogue. This is much more promising than the strategy of isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Whether this will work, I don't know. We'll see. We're watching the peace process as it happens in real time.
All right. If anybody gathers like more than 5 people, let alone 10 in a room like Seattle did, you merit a call. And you put your hand up too, Walter. So over to you.
Thank you, Mark. So we have one question here on Russia, and then we have a question that has nothing to do with Russia. So we'll wait on that one.
No, that's okay. You get 2 questions when you gather that many people.
Quick two-parter. So regarding sanctions and tariffs and the impact, does Russia's economy running more on commodities and debt like the US have play a bigger impact on why sanctions and tariffs do and do not impact them?
I'm sorry.
And the other one would be,
I didn't hear the question.
yeah.
How important Russia's economy is on commodities and how the tariffs really impact
How
them?
it impact tariffs, yeah.
Let's just say maybe the whole sanctions regime impacts them,
And
maybe?
that's why it's not bringing him to the table, is because they don't really need the
Okay.
free trade as much as other people.
Okay.
But that's the question, why I'm asking you guys.
Okay. Russia's economy is heavily dependent on commodities. We know that. That's an extractive economy. Um, it is now a war economy. Okay. So all investments, all resources are going towards the war. The money, the people, you have demographic issues. Sanctions, look, let's look at the oil. 90% of the crude oil being sold to China, the cross-border settlements are being done in cryptocurrencies, stable coins, and renminbi. And you're seeing the same thing with India. Does it have an impact? Yes, of course it does. It forces them to build inside and become less dependent on the global economy. Having said that, without China and India, but China in particular, Russia would not have survived these
Mhm.
sanctions. And that's true of Iran as well. So you do have an alliance of the aggrieved, the terminology actually that came from Brzezinski back in the 70s. He called this back in the 70s an alliance of aggrieved. And at that time, we didn't have sanctions. Um, so it
Yeah.
does impact, but that economy is a market economy, as is China's a market economy with an authoritarian government.
Okay.
Adam, I
So
would just add that the autocratic nations now have a new playbook for sanctions. They didn't have one the first time. The sanctions aren't as effective today as they were in the past, and I don't think they will be going forward.
Regarding the sanctions, let me add one more thing. The Russia has become very, very good at sanctions evasion. And in fact, the leading university, the Higher School of Economics, has a graduate program on sanctions evasion. I've signed up.
So wait, you're saying
Online.
we can major in sanctions evasion?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. All right, let's keep it going.
All right, Mark, we got
Yeah.
another question here from the room. Go ahead,
Yep.
Jim.
Sorry, this is one for actually Stephen. Could you comment on the reliability of U.S. government numbers such as CPI and employment, and how does that affect the economy, both domestic and international?
Has a big impact. They're under question. We talked about this last week. The numbers are they're among the best in the world, and they're still not great. Is the way to think about it. I don't at our firm we look at the trends, not the data points. And it was alarming when you had a 258,000 person revision in employment in a quarter. That's not the way it should work. But I think you have to. I think there's a lot of focus on them, but we tend to like the numbers when we like them and not like them when we don't. When they don't give us what we want to hear from the administration's perspective. They like the CPI number when it came out previous to the unemployment number. They had no problem with that data from the same agency. So I think you have to take it with a grain of salt, the noise around it. I think the numbers are okay. But you have to go deeper than just the headline numbers every time something's reported, because what's underneath the surface, the distortions are quite big right now from industry to industry, either because of the sanctions, because of the general changes in terms of trade, and just the distortions in the overall economy because of the wars and all the other short-term things that are going on. You will see big swings in the numbers. But I think overall the US numbers are as good as you'll find. It doesn't mean they're great. It just means they're as good as you'll find out there.
Stephen, can I ask a question
Go
on
ahead.
that?
Dunk,
Yeah,
sorry, Wojcik's got his hand up. Sorry. I want to hear
Yeah.
from you. But hold, Hold your fire. We're coming to the Hamptons again. Are you in the Hamptons?
I am east.
All right. Well, wait, Hampton Bays is too west for you?
That's like an hour and a half drive in August.
Oh, God. It depends on depends on the
You
day.
might as well get a helicopter to do that trip.
Oh, all right. We'll talk about it later. Wojciech.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that in 94, there was an agreement and they were given 3 countries, which is Russia, US, and Britain, were gave guarantees to Ukraine for its sovereignty. And it was broken by one of the guarantor, and the others reacted in a not exactly the way that should, and according to this international agreement. And it's also the second thing is that the war lasts already for 11 years and not 2 or 3 years like it is positioned. So it's a long story, and nobody's keeping its word basically, and that's what's
you know who's keeping the word? Wojciech, is Poland. Poland is ahead of Russia, head of Europe, the EU, and their defense spending, NATO's, I should say.
yeah.
And how do you see Poland today, given the change of government, and the neighboring countries?
I mean, it's a difficult situation because we have extremist thoughts, either left or right, or even not even defined, arising all around the world. So, it's a basic fight of the people, reasonable people in the middle of the political thinking, versus all the extremists that come from right, left, and whatever side.
We could probably learn from Poland on that front, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes, but Poland is not immune in that respect for sure. So we have this problem internationally, and I think this is that will define our future if we can stop this extremism to come into force.
Okay. I don't know if just so everyone knows, I used to work for Bob Dole. Just by show of hands, does anyone know who Bob Dole is?
Over here.
So
Dole Fruit Company.
and how about Tip O'Neill? Good try. Tip O'Neill, right? So Bob Dole and Reagan and Tip O'Neill used to have beers together. And they would solve issues, or they would golf together or whatever. And you would but the middle doesn't sell political tickets. Yeah. So what we are here for, we don't do politics. We acknowledge politics, but we want to find where we can find ways to work together. So, and that even the Koch brothers and others will on the left will, and I'm truly in the middle. I'm in that 1-2%. Getting prisoners, let's ending recidivism for 50% of the prisoners. Let's on international politics, just where we can find middle ground. That's what we're here for, and we want to have open debate, and we're okay to criticize everybody. So anyway, that's just a reiteration if you're new to our
But to your point, Mark, where is the middle ground in this age of politics?
well, we are there definitely. I wanted to be part of it. I want to be part of the communication of middle ground, or at least both sides listening. And you can tell me I'm wrong, but that's what we're here for.
Mark, if I can make a quick comment, I really don't understand American politics, to be honest, but I have read that most Americans are independents as opposed to being Republican or Democrat. That's a huge.
It's huge, but there are no machines around independence.
And there is no leadership that if someone could step in and fill that vacuum of leadership.
Okay, but that's not us.
No,
Not at the moment.
I get that.
All right. Other comments, questions on what's happening in the world?
Yeah, just one, a couple of facts. Once again, what you see on the news is one thing. Um, going to Gaza for 1 second, now you're talking about having to take over the whole thing. Just a couple of numbers. So Gaza has a few more people than Manhattan. It's twice the size of Brooklyn. Okay. It has more tunnels than the entire New York subway system. It has 36 hospitals, which is 3 times Manhattan.
What?
And there's schools with schoolrooms and stores of weapons in another room in the school. So the idea that there could be some so-called agreement to solve the problem, the Israelis are looking at those facts and going,
You're wading into those geopolitical.
no. I'm simply giving you numbers about
I
how
hear
the
you.
problem cannot be solved so
All right. All right. Fair enough. Okay. Okay.
Mark, we have another question from the room, if that's
And-
all right.
Well, Duncan had a question first. If you want to
Sorry.
ask away, Duncan.
Okay, so here's my question. If you want to take off all your political hats, if you ran a financial firm and you saw that employment report and you've been watching AI take over the world for the last 2 years, and anybody involved in AI willing to spend billions and billions of dollars to drive it, are you happy with the process that these government statistics come up with? Would you, as a CEO, think, I can find somebody that can do this better?
I mean, gather statistics or what?
I'm just talking about how they're reporting the statistics. Everybody says they missed by a lot. Steven says they missed by a lot.
Okay.
So I'm asking the question, anybody in this room was a CEO of a company that was employing a process for gathering that information with all the advances in investment we're making in AI?
Okay.
Do we truly believe we're getting what we're paying for in that process?
Anyone want to take that? Anyone involved with data gathering, governmental or otherwise?
This is the BLS. Is everybody happy with that outcome?
Well, I think, Duncan, happy with the outcome. No, how do you evolve a system from, a paper-based to a digital age is really the issue. And what does it mean to the numbers and the integrity of the numbers too? So it becomes a bit of a challenge to transition as well. So I think you're asking the right question. I think your question is that, are we getting a good return on our spend with government? I think we can all answer that one.
Well, what I was really getting at is the rhetoric around that immediately became political because of who did it and he fired somebody. But kind of feels to me like the whole thing needs a fresh look and a makeover. I mean, you either believe in AI, that it helps us manage and gather data better, or if you believe in that, you can't think that that's an acceptable, these labor statistics numbers have been, we need a better product. That's all I'm saying, right? So that was really my point there. And that gets into this political stuff, right? If people just look at what we were given, how many people can say you were actually happy with that? And how is that consistent with how the market and the economy is being invested in the investments we're making in AI? It just doesn't make any sense.
I think, Duncan, you need a better product as long as it's not viewed as politicized.
Well, politicians politicize everything. Our job is to take the politics out and just say, yeah, actually, that's not good enough. And it isn't good enough.
Manipulate the numbers.
Aren't there private sector equivalents to BLS?
Oh, believe me, the Apollos of the world and all these guys are probably doing all this on their own, right? I mean, they don't, so that's their whole arbitrage.
Right.
That there's probably 25 people out there that have better numbers from the private sector and are trading against what the government's producing.
Well, that's John Locke. It's the marketplace of ideas and sources.
Yeah.
Duncan, when I was at State Street, I had 3 economists at our disposal. We got updated all the time, and they look at all kinds of numbers, not just BLS numbers.
Exactly. So our BLS numbers are terrible. So, why
No,
would it, how
no,
could that even be
Duncan,
debatable?
they're just one piece of the puzzle. You look at labor, but then you look at ADP. You look at
Yeah,
both.
I understand that. I understand it. I just think, it's not a good product.
All right, you could always change the numbers.
Who's asking? Who made that point?
No, I'm just saying you can always change the numbers if you don't like them, which is what's happening. So
Well, that's another level. Okay.
I hear you.
Chandler's visiting us from Brazil. He that's what they do there for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
They are revised for accuracy, supposedly.
I remember America was like on high, and then we had the hanging Chad. Remember that 2000? I was living abroad, and they said America's veneer has been lost because of the hanging Chad incident. Whose veneer is strong? Like who's the Finns? I don't know. Like who? I mean, no one trust. Who does people trust? Which country is the most trustworthy? Whose data is the most trustworthy?
Sure.
Scandinavia.
Zarin, do you have you have an answer? Scandinavia,
Or a
okay.
joke, but I was gonna say like Switzerland, maybe.
Australia.
No, you guys,
Japan.
Australia.
State of Florida.
I mean, it's all biased, right? We're all biased. That's right. That's the point.
Because the way that it is like measured is biased. Like to compare it, you have to then measure it the same way. If one is biased, then of course it may all be biased. We're just maybe measuring bias
All right,
against
let me shift this because we're trying to be practical.
Yeah.
What is the most interesting investment theme among our community today? Right? We can talk about bias, we can talk about all these other things. What is interesting today? What do we not want to miss out on, and how do we do it?
Powering up the economy.
Distressed, and it's very hard to do. It's hard work. It's not hard to do. It's hard work.
All right. So Andy Fish says distressed investing hard to do. What was your point, Stephen Burke?
Electrification. How do you power up the economy for the needs going forward?
So we would, and how do we? Is there a specific play there? Are we looking at nuclear?
The whole transition. It's the whole energy transition, and dealing with the AI system in the process.
Energy consumption.
Is that part of the federal spending team that Trump has created, and his sons were also thinking of forming a fund, etc., that with investing in companies that's going to benefit from federal spending?
Are you talking about that's not bias? Are you trying to talk about a different factor?
No, not a bias. I'm just saying, is Stephen saying like talking about the like companies that's going to benefit from the federal spending? It seems like a governmental project.
We need to remake our electric in the U.S. alone. We need to remake our electrical grid, but globally, we power the system up is going to be one of the biggest areas of spend you'll see.
I mean, obviously, we'd love to find green energy as part of that strategy, but it's a transition.
We have not built a large transformer in 4 decades in the United States.
And to order transformers, they're on backlog for a couple of years now.
Yep.
Who are the suppliers of transformers?
Well, the large transformer, they shut down the production, so no one's made one. But to Stephen's point, you have transformers all the way down to the one on the telephone pole near the street. But you can't do anything in green or otherwise without
transformers.
Samir, can you provide us with a transformer?
Not transformers in the US right now, mainly because of the tariffs, right? So the point is that transformers, you're absolutely right that transformers are not to be had in the US because, we allowed that manufacturing to lapse. Now that said, I invest into energy a lot, particularly green hydrogen, so on and so forth. What I found is that because the US this year has, with the Inflation Reduction Act and everything else that Stephen alluded to has gone away. It's made it more challenging for us, right? Or it's shifted investments more back in the direction of natural gas, oil, natural gas, coal. What I'm seeing overseas in, say, Canada, Europe, other places is investment into that green energy, that there are tax credits and everything else, because the rest of the world is kind of moving on, right? And trying to fix this problem in other ways, as opposed to trying to use old energy. So I do see a lot of investment happening in that space outside the US.
Anyone else want to weigh in? We talked about energy themes.
I'll do it.
There we go. Rich,
So one of the things I do is a partner in an early stage venture fund for blockchain and crypto. So I know a little bit about this. I won't speak about our activities, just generally, the crypto blockchain space in the US and globally is very hot. And I think there's newfound momentum in the space, like in a lot of emerging markets, something I did for 20 plus years in Eastern Europe and Russia. Bigger part of the actual activity are in the liquid space. Liquid space is now $4 trillion. It's led by the Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's a bunch of other altcoins, and there's a lot of tokens, and there's a lot of volatility. So I would say there are specialist groups who are like hedge funds focused on trading the volatility, some market neutral, some not market neutral. There are groups that do this as kind of boutiques, setting up specialist products to trade the liquid market. I recently reconnected with Zoe Cruz. She does one of them. She used to be president of Morgan Stanley, and she's quite an impressive person.
she's a new client of ours as well.
So she's, these are people to talk to. And then, of course, there's the early stage and later stage venture plays. And the areas that we've focused on are payments that based on stablecoin rails, tokenization of real world assets, and a whole bunch of other things around infrastructure that are creating new rails to essentially within 5 to 7 years, faster than most people realize. When you open up your phone, it's going to be powered by blockchain. So all the financial services are quietly, they're publicly saying, like Jamie Dimon, this stuff, we're not ready for this and so on. But behind the wall, behind their walled gardens, they're working diligently, throwing tens of millions, and in some cases more than that, to bring their products into blockchain rails, BlackRock, Fidelity, and others. And one of the things that I saw done by a company called Onera is they basically are connecting regulated financial institutions so that they can actually exchange tokens and digital assets. And until now, all that promise of how regulated institutions actually interact with each other is just not happening. So people are tokenizing, but there's no secondary market. So I think the pieces are quickly being put in place. And another thing people do is you can now use digital assets for repo trades. So instead of having to tie up money overnight, these big groups can now put capital or borrow capital by the minute or the hour. So you don't have to tie up money overnight. So I would just say spend time figuring out, everybody looks at AI. And I was in Russia. We used to have a complex. Everybody used to look at China. Like David Rubenstein used to say, China's in a league of its own. I think AI is in a league of its own. It's drawing a lot of capital. There's still a lot of problems in blockchain and crypto, but it's the second biggest thing happening. And were it not for AI, I would say it's a pretty big deal. And it's coming faster than most people realize.
Okay, so Zarin, thank you.
Yeah, okay. I was going to comment on that, and now maybe that raised the question. What do you think about the treasury companies? I mean, these are not maybe the typical sustainable businesses that help humanity, etc. But lately there's been, the poster child of it is the strategy, which was called MicroStrategy before. But it seems the market is willing to pay 2 times the price of crypto for a publicly listed companies that are just investing in different, crypto. And recently there was one with gold, and now people are thinking maybe we put tokens, we tokenize a real estate and then put the tokens into the publicly traded US company.
So your point
But
is there some uplift value of being traded?
and suddenly the prices rise. But I mean, is this a hype, or I mean, it's not. It's not necessarily like sustainable business building, but kind of like a gamble play where you can make quick gains.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyone? I mean, obviously liquidity, there's an advantage of liquidity. I mean, some of these markets are not as liquid that they're more in the traditional markets. Anyone on
And for example, strategy was like issuing many convertible instruments, convertible debt, and then the hedge funds are also trading on this. So it's like
So the
supplying.
question is, if you could supply the volume of that trading out, then that would show me in liquidity. I don't know. I'm curious what the liquidity, is someone like Leslie, maybe you know, the liquidity attributes.
I don't know offhand, but I mean, in terms of absolute value, but it's something that I've been watching very carefully, and probably what concerns me most about the crypto industry, because I think that blockchain is going to become so important. And as your friend pointed out, it's been overshadowed a bit by AI, but is at least as important. But what concerns me is all the leverage that you're starting to see, the leverage and the speculation that's going into the sector. And I hope we don't have another FTX moment in that regard. You know, just where the system gets compromised.
Does anyone see an FTX darling situation? Is anyone taking an exorbitant amount of the volume?
FTX was the last of about 5 different disasters. I think everyone is way too careful about wallets, exchanges, security today than back then. So unlikely.
There are certain advantages to a treasury which have to do more with management than the value of the underlying assets. I think that if it's a treasury that's focused strictly on one token, it's actually not an advantage, except that maybe because of the liquidity and the ability to do large scale staking, there is one advantage, but probably not much more than if you have enough money to stake your own tokens. There's governance and oversight. There's some tax advantages. There's certainly some risk management if you don't know what you're doing, and I highly recommend that crypto is something to be very cautious of. But with Bitcoin, which is such a popular coin, I don't see an advantage if the treasury is just investing in Bitcoin and selling stock for higher than the value of its holdings. To me it's doesn't make a lot of sense if it's strictly that.
Peter, if I could tell you through staking and other mechanisms, I will guarantee your downside. Give me your collateral, and I'll seek to gain you a 1 to 6% annual return on the Bitcoin that you own. Downside protected, to be diligenced. Is that interesting?
It is 6% is high for popular tokens. I stake Ethereum at 3 or 4%. I try to stake long term with tokens that I feel will have a guaranteed appreciation. Solana, I like staking, but in the end, it really has to do with folks who are not confident to manage their own portfolios, that a treasury gives them some stability and sense of protection. I think they can crash and burn. I don't get it myself. I think Michael Saylor is a hype artist. I think I agree with.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone else before we break? It's 12. And my battery died on my computer. It's a sign.
Just a quick
Oh,
comment.
Adam, we should plug LATAM Miami,
Yes.
October 9-10.
Yes, we will have that. That's coming together quite well. The LATAM conference on the 9th. We'll have a welcoming, right now, the way it stands, we'll have a welcoming cocktail on the 9th, and we will compress the event to one day. And we'll focus on a number of activities in Latin America, including medical tourism. We'll talk about tariffs. We'll talk about commodities trading, fertilizers, coffee, and the overall theme will be the geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions in Latin America, and where are the business opportunities as a result of this.
So geopolitical wins, but we'll talk about all those countries. So we'll have breakouts by several countries and the industries that Adam just mentioned. And then you have the weekend to enjoy Miami if you want to come down the 11th and 12th. But next we're in London on the 18th and 19th. Similarly, if you want to enjoy London after that, come join us. So that's at the Mayfair Hotel. But Samir, last thought, because we have to run.
Yes. So just a point to blockchain, which was that if anyone's been watching The Gilded Age, right, on Amazon, right, the whole thing about that was all these bank runs that used to happen before the Fed was established in 1913, right? So kind of what I'm hearing about blockchain overall and cryptocurrencies sort of reminds me of that conversation, right? That the effectiveness of regulation, right, to the extent we have that. It will probably improve liquidity further.
Why don't we do a deep dive on this? Because we have Zoe Cruz now, part of our, and I'm sure Rich, you and your group and others here. So let's have a discussion. Maybe we were talking about actually that we would do this next week. We're a little busy with this transition, but we want to have 2 deep dives a week, and we can make that happen, so we can bring some people together and go deeper on these subjects. So, and I heard earlier someone said, like, don't cut these off at 11:30. Okay, we could probably do that unless it's a super important subject. Then we want to like jump into that subject. So thank you, everyone. If you're not a member, I let a few people in. It's $361 a year. If you can't do this, I don't know what to say. Just become part of us. There's more functionality as you move up, and we'll have more shades of, I don't want to say gray, but shades of orange, whatever.
Depender and Jack alone are worth the 350. 350.
Where's Depender?
They both have high entertainment value, right, Rich?
Absolutely.
Yeah, not us, but them, for sure. All right.
Thank you all. Take care,
Thanks,
Mark.
everyone.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.